Bum-ba-da-dum. Howdy y'all, Banjo Ben here, back with a bag of licks lessons. These are some of the favorite lessons of many of you. I hear from you lots that you're wanting more and more bag of licks lessons, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to tackle in this bag of licks lesson one of the most common things that you face as a banjo player, and that's when the end of the phrase goes from a 1 chord to a 5 chord to a 1. So if you're in the key of G, that would be a measure of G, and then a measure of D, and then back to G. We have it in tons of songs, and I think that we can get in ruts in what we play in those areas. So what I want to do is give you 10 different options, actually much more than that, because as we cover these, I'm going to give you variations on essentially every one. So it's probably like 30, 40, 50 licks, something like that. Check out what we play here, and we'll dive in. Those are a lot of fun. So we range from the more traditional approach, and we're going to talk about that, like what did Crow do, what did Scruggs do? And then we get more into the bluesy, modern, even some Tony Rice type influence licks, right? Lots of blues notes, messing with the timing, and we're going to, as I said, do variations of each one of these. So if you're a Gold Pick member here on the site, you have everything you need right below. Just download the Jam Track MP3, download the tabs. We've got about a 30-minute lesson today. If you're watching somewhere else like YouTube, you can come on board as a Gold Pick member and learn all of these licks. But let's go ahead and dive into lick number 1, and we'll talk about some variations as we go. A bajillion bluegrass songs have a measure of G, then a measure of D, and then back to a measure of G. So it's something that we constantly do as banjo players, and there's no reason whatsoever that we should get bored when we're playing these little 1-5-1 turnarounds. What I mean by 1-5-1 is the 1 is the G chord, so a measure of G, and then the song goes to a measure of 5, and then back to G. Okay, so tons of songs do this. So this is going to apply not only when you're playing backup, but also your lead. We're going to cover 10 great licks, but beyond that, I'm going to give you some variations on them as we go. The first one that I want to look at is just kind of establish what's many times heard here and what you should definitely have under your belt, what we call the traditional walk-up. Sound like this. Or some variation of that, okay? So we're just walking from the low D string, leading the ear back to that G chord, which is what it comes back to in measure 3. Now, I want to point out something as we go along. Measures 1, 3, and 4 are going to be the same for every one of these examples, just to establish some continuity there where you're not really having to worry about playing those things. Those are just common licks that take you from the 1-5 and back to the 1. We'll have one variation later on, but I'll point that out. So really all that changes is the second measure in these lines, the things that we play over that 5 chord, over that D chord. And in this one, we're just playing the, which traditional, simple, yes. Effective, absolutely. And the reason why it's so effective is because it is leading the audience's ear and the other musicians' ears exactly where you want it to go. You want it to go back to this G string. Sorry. Okay. Now, you can do all kinds of things to spice that up. We're going to really spice it up here in a bit, but even looking at this simple version, what could you do? Well, you could use, instead of a 4th fret, a 3rd fret to make it more bluesy. Or, instead of doing 2-4, you could do 3-4. That would sound a little better to me. You could also incorporate some rolls in there so that it's not just quarter notes. All good. All right. You could also throw in another note. Doesn't have to be quarter notes. You could throw in that 3rd fret, and there's an 8th note sound like this. whole thing. Okay, lots of variations. You could keep it quarter notes, but do a slide. That would sound kind of cool. Okay, probably not something that I would default to, but just showing you examples of how to create variations from each one of these. All right, our next one we call the D pentatonic. This is another traditional one that you need to have under your belt. You hear it a lot. Sounds like this. Okay, so it's one of the more difficult as far as fingering goes in our fret hand, because we're having to make that full D chord, which a lot of people don't like, but you need to learn it. And then we're having to use our ring finger to walk 4, 2, 4. That also involves with our pick hand doing some single string picking. So you might just practice, if you have difficulty getting this one clean, just break it down. Break it down, just practice this first. Then back it up one note. Then back it all the way up. And then start with the open. That's how I learn anything, is just walking it back like that. Okay? The whole thing in context. Very good. Variations on that. Instead of playing that 4th fret down there at the bottom, you can do something like this. Hammer on 3 to 4. That just gives it a little bit more of a bluesy feel. That'd be pretty cool right there. You could also, don't forget that you can use that 3rd fret on the G string in conjunction with these types of licks. So you could do a pull-off like that. That sounds pretty cool. That's more bluesy. I'm missing my strings today for some reason. Sorry, guys. No, I like that. I think that's its own lick, standing on its own, but it's also a variation of what we're doing here. The next one would be called, I'm just going to call it a Scruggs, because he's probably the one that invented it. Nobody shoot me if I'm wrong, but it's traditional Scruggs, and it sounds like this. Okay, so I remember getting tricked up with this one when I was first learning how to play because of the timing. Don't worry about the tab. Do not worry about the tab. Take your eyes off the tab. Let's pull it away, actually. Boop, it's gone, and I just want you to listen. Now pick up your banjo, and we're going to do a hammer-on, open hammer, and then a quick hammer-on pull-off. Okay, so the whole thing slowly, measure 10. Okay, now you can pull the tab back and see how that's written, but I think the tab can be confusing. Now, variations for that, a lot of times people they'll throw a 1st fret in there, or a 1st string. Thickens it up a little bit. I think it can thicken it up a little bit too much sometimes. You can also pinch each time you do that, if you want to be really powerful. But that 1st string will kind of cover up the ornaments that you're... And if you want to really get it sounding cool, you throw a little bit of bend in that string. And that will give it a great little sound. Oh, I love that one. If I can stay in tune. Okay, the next one will be another, what I would consider traditional. I call it chromatic quarters. It sounds like this. And this is really important to be able to do. Now, on slower tempos and even mid-tempo songs, you may not elect to do this, although I think it sounds great. But this is very, very helpful whenever you're going super fast. You want to find ways to conserve movement and get simple when you can, but also remain effective. What I love about these chromatic chords, what do I mean by that? I just mean that I'm walking up, covering each fret. because the target note is this G string, also found on that 5th fret. So we're going 2, 3, 4, 5 essentially, right? But we're playing it here in the open string. Okay. What I love about that is I think it even more pointedly carries your ear up to this G string. Earlier we saw walking up the major scale, right? But this time, I mean, it's building tension as it goes, and it wants to be released into that G note, right? Okay? Now, you could work a roll into this. You could do like a square roll. Something like that. Oh. Okay. I think that can get a little busy. You could mess with the timing of it. You could, you could turn the first note into a half note. Getting back to what we were doing in the traditional walk-up. But have this one in your bag. Be able to walk chromatically up to that G string. That's really going to help you. Now, we're going to continue on in part 2. I want to cover a very quintessential crow 1-5-1 turnaround, and then we're going to start getting a little bit more bluesy and jazzy. That'll be available for my Gold Pick members over at banjobenclark.com. So if you're just joining me on YouTube or Facebook, go to joinbanjoben.com. Learn what it means to be a Gold Pick member. Get all these tabs and the full lessons. Hundreds of them. I'll see you over there.